Welcome to the Soul Sisters series, where you'll get thought-driven, inspiring topics for your soul with Vaughn Solis and Brenda Rachel. Okay, so welcome again to the Soul Sisters series. I'm Vaughn.
I'm Brenda.
And together, we are the Soul Sisters. Okay, so we are at part 7. Last week in part 6, we actually had an amazing episode. We talked about pain as part of our chosen path and the paddle and flip drill as an analogy for life. It was a pretty awesome episode, was it not? And we covered a lot of things. So check that episode out, part 6. Today in part 7, we're going to be talking about stopping at the river's edge. This is an analogy, as was the paddle and the flip drill from my sister's book that she was a rafter, and well, you were a rafter. And just as I read her books, the really cool things I got from that. And as I said, check that episode out from part 6. But stopping at the river's edge is basically a continuation of that. When to stop, why to stop, and what you can do, how to use that rest stop in your life when things don't go as planned. So we've talked a lot about in this series, which has just been awesome. And we're not quite at the end of it, but we're getting there. Mm-hmm. And as we've talked, Brenda and I are actual blood sisters. And the whole point of this series is to leave a legacy for each other. But more importantly, it's to share with actually just as importantly, it's to share with the audience, the similarities that really we have with our siblings. And, we're really focusing on sisters here. If you come from very, very different experiences and think that you don't understand each other, right? Mm-hmm. That we really do have more similarities than differences. And it's really learning about each other, being curious about each other. Mm-hmm. And instead of how siblings can get into judgment and, and feel like all the kid things, everything you acted like as basically a kid, I don't think that ever really changes as adults. It might modify a little bit. But anyway, it's to come to understand your sister. And I will say also your brother, if you can have these kinds of conversations with a brother. But the point being is there is estrangement in a lot of families between siblings. We didn't want that. We've both come from different types of dysfunction, but what has bonded us, obviously being blood siblings, is the death of my daughter, Janaea, in 2005 when she was 22 to suicide. And I think that probably put both of us in a frame of mind, and the rest of our small family that is in constant touch with us, to talk about death, to talk about, to not leave things undone.
Right.
And even though we didn't do that 18 years ago, we're at a stage in our life now where we've decided to create this legacy and share with you as part of that to talk about many, many things that starts at the beginning, coming from a great deal of dysfunction and arriving at very similar places, taking extremely different paths. And that is what every episode is dedicated to in various topics that we discover. So today we are going to talk all about stopping at the river's edge. And really for me, I'm going to just sort of open up. So I use the words as a time for reflection, pause, taking stock, recharging, resetting, reframing, mm-hmm. and rethinking who we really need and want to be when life does not go our way. So in my case, it was the loss of Janaea that uprooted me, laid me flat in my back, and sent me on a journey that has been mostly about really trying to discover who I am. And as a sibling, you have said I'm a very different person. I know I'm a different person, but it's different when you have a family member, and frankly, you're the only one that does this for me, reflect back how different I am, what you lost as a result of my bereavement. And so that plays an important part in our Soul Sisters series. But on the other hand, the other side of this is all the struggles you've had in your personal life. And because of how different it is and, being alone for a number of years and struggling with all the things you've talked about, your fibro, your depression, suicide attempt, I think, did I miss disabilities? Those would be the biggies, sort of posing the challenges for you, forcing you more than once to stop at the river's edge.
Absolutely.
And me all the time stopping at the river's edge. So this is going to be a really good conversation because I love the analogy. I just love the analogy for stopping at the river's edge. Most people don't stop in life, period. Everybody's stressed. Everybody, suffers some degree of anxiety, anxiousness, worry, fear, particularly in the climate that we're living in, the global one, our, national climates, our community climates. There's problems everywhere you look. There's problems. It's very hard to stay afloat, using the river analogy. It's very hard to stay afloat sometimes, even the most disciplined of us, to stay on track. And Brenda and I have decades of a spiritual practice, metaphysical interests, and going back to, our childhood, really. And we talked about that in earlier episodes, our first 2 episodes. But it still gets hard. You and I have had many conversations together, right? Oh God, how do we keep going? And we have propped each other up and helped each other sort of get to what the real issue is that's bothering us. And then we have to take ourselves to the river's edge because it's a very private, personal, intimate look within. Right?
Correct. Absolutely.
And so that's my take on stopping at the river's edge. The one piece, we could talk all day about it, but the one piece I really want to bring to it is addressing loss of identity and limitations. Well, those are 2 things. Okay, so the 2 things is loss of identity and limitations from something. Doesn't matter where they come from and what kind of limitations they are, and you've had them too. But I really want to have a discussion around that. How I know for me, my limitations, and I'm going to speak about them more from the mental emotional, but the mental emotional affects the physical. And we've already talked, and the physical affects the mental and emotional. So they all work together, but it can be very, very disruptive to who the heck we thought we were or wanted to be. When something takes us down or severely limits us when we can't do what we thought we were going to do. And you and I have had many conversations about this. So how about you open it up and let's get started with you explain what stopping at the river's edge means for you and how you've had to work with that restive state. And then get yourself kind of out of it too. Because we don't want to stay there, right? Great. It's kind of like when you get really comfortable and you're on a picnic blanket or you're in any situation. Picture it. The warm sun on your face, the sparkling river, the beautiful rapids going by, right? I should put some sound effects to this. And it's just really hard to move and get up, and you don't want to get up from that spot of safety, that place of safety. That's what the river's edge. Anyway, so picking it up from there, what does it mean for you? How have you used that restive state?
Well, I think the first thing for me in my situation was not that it didn't happen in your situation. Yeah, my first awareness of stopping at the river's edge was from a physical disability. And I didn't make a choice consciously I wasn't aware of making a choice consciously that I was going to be stopped at the river's edge.
Yeah.
It just happened to me. So I think for myself, paddling down the river in my raft, and then bingo, I was like likening to falling out
Yeah.
and swimming to the edge.
Yeah.
Because I had to use every ounce of my energy that I had for me to actually get to the edge and be able to just sit myself down. And it wasn't even a regrouping. It was just, it was absolute. I had to do it.
Yeah.
So for me, I think there's two things with stopping at the river's edge. One is when it's by choice.
Yeah.
And one is when it's forced on you.
Yes.
And
good point.
Again, I believe I created all my situations in my life. So I will throw that in now because I speak about that a lot through my book. But when this happens, and I wasn't in a conscious state of me creating it in that moment, it felt like it was being done to me.
Of course.
So I was in a reactionary mode, not in a responsive mode. And so there's two ways of coming at something for me when it hits me.
Yes.
It's, am I reacting to it or am I responding to it?
So I just want to say really quickly about that. So for audience that might be thinking about this reacting versus responding. So my experience and my absolute teaching and belief is whenever we are in shock, trauma, initial sudden impact of something, we're going to be reacting because we're going in survival mode. Something dangerous has happened. Something threatening has happened.
Right.
How am I going to survive? And your very, very first thing is going to be react.
Right.
Responsive is when we have time, and this could even come years after we've disciplined ourselves to be responsive. We may still react because even when you expect things to happen, you're still going to go into a bit of shock, surprise, whatever. And that's fine. But so getting yourself, and I just want to ask if you sort of agree with this. So getting yourself, okay, I've had the time to react. Now I don't want to live my life like that. Now I need to be responsive. And so I just wanted, do you want to add anything to that difference?
Yeah, I think now, through everything that I've been through in my life, I still react for sure. And yet, however I do it, most of the time I'm upset and I go into I have anxiety. So I go into heightened anxiety and the worst case scenario. I don't think things through.
Yeah.
As far as, okay, step by step by step.
Yes.
You're very good in helping me when I phone you up and say, okay, I'm having a moment here. This has happened. And then you walk me through it and get me back to being in a responsive mode. And taking action, whatever the step is. However, I will say to people out there, take as long as you need to be, don't force yourself and don't have other people forcing you to being in a place where your mind can't go. And we have to, I think it's very, very important to allow ourselves, whether it's grieving, whether it's sadness, whether it's despair, whether it's like with my ill health and it hitting me and my whole lifestyle had to change. It became very impaired from having disabled, from my very, very busy life, had to completely stop to allow the whole process to really. So I just wanted to say that to the audience.
Yes, of course.
The time that you need and don't let anyone say you should be in a different place than what you are, or you're taking too long to get over this, whatever this is. It's your life, and you will follow your path however you need to follow it.
So I just want to say ditto to, I'm going through something. We help each other. So we've got a 50-50 in on that.
Yeah.
But the reason we can help each other is because we both understand anxiety, which is different from stress. Anxiety for me is just like, you built the mountain out of the molehill, and it's never, the problem's never going to go away, or you feel trapped, or any of those initial, threatening emotions. And we're better at it both. I mean, I'm way, way, way better at sort of digesting and contemplating and thinking. But now you help me understand solutions.
Well, yeah, I think the thing, like that, we're good for bouncing that off of each other. With you give me options.
Yeah.
You point out options. Okay, what are your options here?
Yeah.
What's the worst case scenario?
Yeah.
What's the best case scenario?
Yes.
What scenario are you looking for?
Yeah.
What outcome are you actually looking for?
Yeah. Yeah. And so if you have a buddy, if it's your sister, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, someone that is a confident, a strong confident that really understands, because people who don't live with anxiety don't understand anxiety.
Right.
We know that for a fact.
Correct.
And so when you understand anxiety and you can kind of drill down in minutes sometimes, in seconds sometimes, what's really going on? What is really, really, really going on here?
The root of the fear.
Yeah.
Because anxiety is fear-based.
Absolutely.
And so and usually when we talk through whatever issues at hand for me, it won't be anything to do with that, or very little to do with the issue that's going on.
Right.
It will be some fear that is way bigger than the pending issue.
And it will be a fear that has probably been with you for a very long time, and may be the result of a trauma.
Yeah.
It may be the result of a death that caused trauma. And that's why it is so essential that you embark on and I'm speaking in general terms here, but both of us have done that, embarked on an inner journey as soon as you can, as soon as you have been afflicted with whatever is uprooting your life, because that's the only way you can really figure out the triggers, understand the root of the anxiety, and from that, find your solutions.
Correct.
And it has happened to me, as recently as, earlier this year, and I was traveling. And, one thing happened that sent me into a complete spiral of absolutely illogical thinking and anxiety, simply because what I was worried about would have forced me to be alone. And I wasn't really sure what I would do it will happen in two scenarios. If the situation actually manifested, I was going to be alone. I was traveling. Would I, in both cases, what action would I take? And so that's the thing that happened. But deep down, really what it was is still feeling pretty shaky as I'm growing and still finding in putting more pieces together of this identity of who I am becoming at this age, in this stage. It still felt obviously very shaky and not a lot of confidence. Because you see, when you live with PTSD, such as I do, when we have anxiety, it does rob us of our confidence and our feeling safe and secure, right?
Correct. And I think that's a huge one. Safety and security.
Yes.
Are two issues we both both go to a place of fear.
Yeah.
When that's unsettled.
Right. So it could be anything. It could be the fridge breaking.
Yeah.
It could be anything. And so it's never about the thing, as you say, Bren. It's never about the fridge breaking or, I can't find the person I'm traveling with and I'm scared to death that I'm going to be left figuring things out on my own.
Yeah.
The trigger really there is the root of it. The anxiety there is, I don't feel safe right now.
Right.
And then you can find solutions to whatever it is, so the fridge breaks. Okay, so you find someone, that can take your items, and you won't lose the food, and you won't lose the freezer, and you'll find the money, and all of these things. But we can't get in the weeds of it, because anything can trigger an attack of anxiety.
Absolutely.
Anything.
Yeah.
So the point I want to make here, we went offside a little bit, but I think it's really important to understand that, because that's the kind of thing that pausing understanding if you've had one too many anxiety attacks and you really don't want to be experiencing them in your life anymore, particularly if you've lived with anxiety for many, many years, right?
Yep.
That's a huge, huge, huge opportunity to go, okay, river's edge, please. Off I go. And what do I need to do?
Yeah.
I don't want to live like this anymore, because it really traps you, doesn't it?
Right.
Where you feel you have no options.
Exactly. And so just so people know, in case you're kind of wondering, like, well, I don't live near a river. This isn't about physically going to a river's edge, unless that works for you.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just sitting here going there. Who for the people who are, I'm going, like, that never worked for me.
Yeah, I don't have a river.
I live in the middle of the desert.
Yeah. We're analogy folks, and create it in your mind. The resting place, whatever. We're doing river's edge. It can be whatever restive spot you want. Time out.
Yeah.
But we're really talking about this as the timeout, the restive spot, as frequently as we need it. When, let's go back for a minute, when life forces us to no longer be able to do what we wanted to do or be who we were, such as death in, the family, the death of my child, forced me to really, in fact, I lost my identity because I was so wrapped up in my identity of my family and being a mom of my 2 kids, my daughter, my son, and they were 9 years apart. And so when she died, holy crap, like I honestly struggled for the first several years with, the first many years actually, with only having one child again. And no longer having a daughter. And so, I'm super grateful for my son, and he knows that. Plus, he won't watch this anyway, I'm pretty sure. But if you do watch, you know how much you're loved. Yeah. But no, it was more about I couldn't stand daughter cards. I couldn't stand the word daughter. To this day, I'm very uncomfortable. I use the experience of a nail salon with moms and daughters, chatting away, and I go, holy, I've missed all of that. I could be doing that. I really, etc. So that never really probably goes away. And that has completely, so just taking it back for a step here. So your disabilities and my loss, and we acknowledge it's not that the death of Janae did not impact you, but for this series, we are using your physical disabilities to help people that have not been impacted by bereavement from a human loss. And I'm using basically the death of Janae to use as the example in my life that absolutely was just gut-wrenching and made me have to rebuild from the ground up. So when we talk, we can bring a nice wide scope of experiences to benefit you as the audience in as many ways as possible, because we both come from a wealth of different types of limitations, disabilities. I don't know if you went through identity loss per se, but I sure as heck did, and did not know who I was for many, many years. And I'm in the process of still actually kind of figuring that out. How do I want to be identified? What is it I want to do? What can I do? Because the limitations, which, and another point I want to address here. So we talked in an earlier episode about pain, part 5, probably also in part 6, about pain. And when you have a spiritual practice and you're devoted like we are to the angels, and on this contrast between our perfection, right? And we're not going to talk about it today. They're in part 5 and 6, but our perfection in the spiritual, our soul, our inner self, and we know ourselves as perfect. That we put this pressure on ourselves, or whatever expectation on ourselves to represent that physically as well. And so that does play into it. So when I use the word limitation here, I know in soul spirit, right? The word doesn't exist. It just doesn't exist. And I get that. So I'm using it today because we have agreed also that we must respect and honor the physical experience.
Absolutely.
Where we freaking are limited in things. You know, I cut my finger, I'm going to bleed, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, my heart gets broken, I'm going to feel lost and alone and sad and traumatized and like it's never going to be fixed and everything else that comes with that. So a lot of the mental, emotional problems that I have had to deal with, and I live with PTSD, and I'm going to own it, and it's not a trendy thing. I was diagnosed in 2014, 9 years after my daughter died. Lived with it. It did a lot of damage to my physical body. So those are what created the eventual physical limitations of needing to stop. So your disabilities, you're out of the game. I worked for a boss at the time, and when I would get sick and stuff, and I'm out. And I'm out, and I'm out of the game for a while.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to be really clear about how in a perfect spiritual identity, I guess, or I don't even know how to use that word, but understanding ourselves that way, we would be perfectly healthy, no limitations, shining bright all the time. And you know what I mean?
I do.
And so I need to always kind of talk about that a little bit, because you and I really at our heart don't believe.
No, I think.
Do we believe in limitations?
No,
I said all that, right?
I think for me, the truth of my existence is I came here perfect, whole, and complete, and that's who I am as a soul, as a spiritual soul on this earth plane. What I will add to what Vaughn has said about her emotional trauma, and so where I was hit the hardest with my physical limitations was when I was told I'd be in a wheelchair.
That's it.
At the age of 42.
Yeah.
And my life changed that moment when I was with the specialist and also got the letter. Sorry, I was with the specialist who did all the tests, but then I got the actual physical letter and read the letter.
Yeah, that's
what happened to me was I think that I went into a place of trauma like you.
Yeah.
But and I was by myself with no family around.
How old were you again when you got that news that you'd likely end up in a wheelchair? This is from her fibro.
42.
Yeah.
And so I'm just saying, so I was just, as you were speaking about limitations and everything and things that set us back, I think in that moment, it's just kind of coming to me now as a thought, which I'd never thought about in all these years, almost 30 years.
It's going to be good.
It's going to be good. That my physical being told that the prognosis was I would be in a wheelchair. And it wasn't like in 30 years. It was just, that's your prognosis. I looked at it as like this was imminent. We just didn't know what date it was to be imminent. However, taking it fast forward to my disability of anxiety, so all the things that set me off come from that place, as we were talking, of the unknown, but it goes back to being told what my prognosis really, of being told that this is,
you're going to end up in a wheelchair from your fibro.
Right. So that it's the worst. So whenever anything hits me, because I think that I absolutely went into a place of catatonia or whatever you call it, like where you just,
like numbness,
you can't, like I was barely alive in my mind anyway, because it was like just overtaking my whole body, my pain. And I was so dead. My eyes were dead. Everything was dead. There was nothing there, really nothing there.
Would you say that prognosis like traumatized you?
Correct.
Because
that's what I'm getting.
Yeah.
So I think that every time something, I'm just correlating it now.
Yeah.
That happens in my life, that is, like all the things that you know about that have happened to me, that's the place that I go. That's the place you go.
But I want to say,
which there's no hope.
Yeah.
There's no hope.
There's no hope.
The prognosis is, this is it. You're going to end up like, and for me, I'm sorry for, nothing against anybody that's in a wheelchair.
Yeah. Good point. Good point.
This is my life. And for me, because I was so active and so healthy, and all the things, the so's in front of them, just busy, 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 and enjoying, loving my life, and studying to be the religious science and mind minister. And just everything was going really good in my life when this happened to me. So I was hit like a ton of bricks with this information, and my mind just went into, I can't conceive this. I can't believe this. I don't know what I'm going to do with this information, but my life is done. I'm done. And so, then after a while, then that's when, and I was very, very, very sick for 2 years after I got that prognosis. And that's when I made the choice to commit suicide.
Something I'm thinking about here, though, as we speak, and I'm thinking about mentors like Rick Hansen, right, who went on purpose work for decades. Correct. And, did all these amazing things when he ended in a wheelchair, ended up in a wheelchair.
Yep.
And there's countless people that have lost limbs and, and they've had to dig deep, or maybe not, but they go on and they're inspirational leaders, and respect.
Absolutely.
So this isn't about anybody who's living and struggling in a wheelchair and thinking the same thought. This is just a physical experience that threatened Brenda, right? Just like tons of parents lose children to suicide. That was a physical life experience that threatened my existence. So it's the way that we react to these experiences as the minute it happens, and that information goes into our brain, right?
Yep.
And especially if we're traumatized with it, it's like I always sort of envision that whatever information I fed into my brain on that drive down the highway, which took an hour and 15 minutes to reach Janae's home where she lay dead. Well, I actually found out she had actually passed away halfway to the city from our home in the country. So everything I told myself until the moment I learned she's gone, and then from that moment on to reaching her home and everything else that happened that evening and all the memories and the stuff is still there, and I can access that in a heartbeat, very vividly, by the way. And that's trauma. All that's still in me. All of that is still in you if you're going through that. And those things we bury. So I'm not sitting here saying I've dealt with it. Au contraire, I don't want to deal with any of those feelings and thoughts and emotions because I don't think I can handle it. I could barely handle it back then. And that's why it takes a very, very, we're going off topic a little bit, but it takes a very trained specialist to work with you to take you back to that place of trauma. But that's the same trauma that for millions of people is responsible for all the resulting anxiety and physical illness. And some people even die from stuff like this because they really can't handle it. Heart attacks, all this stuff. So we just applaud each other that, hey, we're still here and doing it, slogging it, and not only that, trying to inspire others. So, and that's my huge respect for anybody, any of us that make that commitment to just keep going, but do something, move from reactionary to responsive, accept that this has happened. And again, stopping at the river's edge, we might as well talk about that right now. Stopping at the river's edge as many times as you need, going to your restive place is what moves us from reactionary to responsive.
Exactly.
As a lifestyle, as a life choice. And then to get us out of those, like you and I still get into the panic. And then you find ways, and it's the dumbest stuff for me that causes my anxiety. No, I'm not saying yes. No, but you're acknowledging that I'm saying that about me. The dumbest things, like terrified I'm not going to get these parcels, that they're going to get lost in my condo building, delivered to someone else, and they're going to steal them because they're hundreds of dollars when I order my supplements, right? So what did I do? After years of having that anxiety and chasing down the postal carrier, and I'm not proud to say I did that, but, I could see when they're coming, run down, get my parcel. It was ridiculous. And I decided, you know what? And my son said, Mom, sign up for flex delivery. I did. Everything goes to the post office. Anxiety, gone.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can order without already attaching that anxiety of the parcel may get lost, which can be a near 3-week journey of living with until that parcel was in my hands. So that's an analogy. That's a real thing I'm sharing. Think about anything in your life that you might be attaching anxiety to because of some kind of trauma in whatever way. And if there's more than one, how many there are in your day, right?
Mm-hmm.
That might not occur every day, but somewhere throughout the week or month or whatever. They're living, they're alive deep within us, waiting to pounce and throw us in that. Your survival mode is alive and well.
Yeah, mine are usually always something that happens that is totally unexpected out of the blue. Some kind that will result in some kind of thing I don't know how to deal with. And so that takes me right back to when I got the letter. I didn't know how to deal with.
Didn't know how to deal with it. That's it. And when stuff happens in your world, and not to make light of it, but they're not life-threatening. These are just, in reality, for most people, would be an annoyance or whatever.
Yeah.
But for people who have been traumatized and who have anxiety or are living with any other kind of disability, disorder, anything that, takes us down, right? Takes us down. You may have complete hopelessness, but not be traumatized. So we're speaking in pretty general terms here, but if the shoe fits, then what we're describing in some way goes, oh God, I feel that too. These things only get worse if we can't really look within and really, and you really also, I think you need someone to bounce ideas off, to understand your craziness, which if people around you don't get it, they're not going to be able to help you because they don't get it. And most of what triggers both you and me to the ordinary person, or when I say ordinary person, let me reframe that, to the person who doesn't suffer anxiety, they think you're ridiculous. Like, what are you worried about?
Yeah.
It was
sort itself out or whatever.
What a dumb thing. And then what that makes us do is just kind of feel stupid or a little crazy or...
Well, no, it doesn't.
Well, it can for people that doesn't understand what's happening to them. You can make yourself feel like you're being stupid.
But for me, I'm just saying, I don't feel that. I feel not respected and not listened to. And so
there you go. Yeah.
So,
which is true. You're not.
Yeah.
And I'm not. And by the way, most of bereavement is like that, by the way, for really difficult loss that people can't relate to. That's pretty much what that experience is like. And I actually read something recently that kind of correlates with this. And in terms of understanding that all those things that we might equate to just a specific, okay, you react this way when you have anxiety. And then we've given you some examples of things that other people would go, maybe, what? Or like my sharing of needing to go down and be there when the postal carrier is there and I could see my parcel, and then I'm like, oh, huge relief, right? And I'm attaching to that experience that she must think I'm nuts. And, the postal lady? Yeah, in the end, she probably didn't care if I was there or I wasn't there. But because it was odd behavior for most people in my building do not run down. I was the only one there that I ever saw run down and chase her. It's not what most people do. They trust, and you even trust, that your parcels are just going to reach you just fine. It's not an issue for me. So I just happened to choose that particular experience because 3 times my parcels got lost and delivered to the wrong people in this building. So I had evidence that something could go wrong. And anxiety is often triggered by that. If we've had evidence that something's going to go wrong, right? Yeah. There you go. You're going to worry about it. Yeah. So taking this back in the context, though, of whatever is challenging you in that way of either anxiety, illness, anything that's forcing you to react. But the other thing I want to say about the trauma piece, so you are going to either be react. So, it's your fight, flight,
fight or flight.
Fight, flight. But there's also the numbing, which is submitting. It's becoming submissive and then freezing. So they do talk, and by they I mean psychologists and psychiatrists do speak about, and you can research this yourself, about this giving into the situation, this submitting to a situation. So they might use examples like for abuse, someone abused will submit to the abuser in the face of all the trauma because they feel like there is no escape. That's probably where you would find most examples of how they would talk about submitting in relation to PTSD trauma. But if we take that a little bit back, and for those people, again, due respect, that is wherever the trauma comes from. I have great respect for anybody living with PTSD and being traumatized by any other situations. So I just want to really be gentle and compassionate about that. It's a grueling thing. We came from trauma from our very earliest childhood. And yeah, we just had a lot of trauma. And, we talk about that. And again, the early episodes 1, 2, but basically with a parent that, tried suicide multiple times as we were children, and how that impacted and is considered huge dysfunction. But at any rate, what I wanted to say is this submitting, and I almost want to say, not diagnosing, that's obviously but sharing as my sister, as I would talk to you in any sitting, in a coffee shop, whatever. Do you think maybe when you got that letter and saw immediately flash, wheelchair, life's over, I can't raft, I can't do, my walks, I can't, all the activity, whatever was defining your life at that moment, and in some way both numbed yourself and submitted to the idea, and then that's it. Like in this static state where,
well, to me, it was just for my own situation, it was the absolute worst prognosis I could have been given. And so just for me. And so it was like a total impairment of my entire life, and with no support. And so zero support. And so for me, trying to figure out how was I going to manage.
Yeah.
And then I went, do I want to manage? Do I want to live a life like this? And so it was a double-edged question or thought pattern that went through my mind like in seconds. Yeah, it wasn't like I contemplated about, do I want to live like this, like weeks later. It was immediate. As soon as I read the letter, I can remember exactly, having those feelings of, oh my God, and just felt like
my life's over.
Yeah.
And I felt that way when I lost Janaea.
Yeah.
That's it. I'm done. My life's over. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure we're not the only two people that something has triggered them in a very large way to go, my life's over. I'll never get out of this. But the immediate, I'm a big proponent of the immediate, if you can even remember in that moment, the immediate thought. And in ours, it's both, my life's over. And then we don't know what we're going to do.
Right.
So bringing this back in the context of rest of space, you can understand and probably relate to, and maybe are even going through how many times we need to get to the shore and rest. And reset for me is about dealing with physical illnesses that have been chronic, that are, I think, finally coming under control for me, that I have suffered, lived with since 2009. And while that might not sound like a big deal, it's a huge deal when you're trying to carry a job and you got to be sick all the time. We also talked about this in an earlier episode as well. The other piece I want to say about that is that when we don't have a chance to fully experience what's taken us down, I'll just say that because it can encompass just so many things. And but in my case, bereavement. I can't tell you how many people I have met that have gone through severe loss, a loss of a child even, and they got to go back to work as if nothing happened. And in our country, Canada, there years later, there might be, I know there's a disability, like unemployment sort of disability pension that you can, insurance you can get for 6 months. It could be 12 by now. But there are requirements to meet, being eligible for it. And it's not a lot of money. Anyway, so in the moments that we are dealing with something we understand, like illness, a disability, I need time out, I need to reset. That actually might be why we go on disability. That's actually why I went on a two-year plus disability in 2015, because I couldn't do it anymore, carry on this expectation I had put on myself and also life put on me, job. Although I had a wonderful employer that I went through numerous work accommodations, which taught me about reframing my experience. I can't work 5 days a week. Oh my God. Down to 4. And then a year later, I can't work 4 days at the office. Okay, 1 day at home. And then it got down to finally all 4 at home. And then it finally, and this was over a year period each, then it got down to disability when I couldn't get out of bed. Reset, reframe, rethink, reassess, everything in my life, because that was the end. 2015 was the end for me operating in one period, a certain way that was go, 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 go. And wow, that period at the river's edge lasted about 3 years. Well, I did things, but constantly, like you said, questioning, who am I? Who do I want to be? Who can I be? And so our stop at the river's edge, our restive space, may need to happen daily for a while as we adjust to our circumstances. What else do you want to say about that,
I think one of the things I want to say is that when you have a physical illness, but you don't look ill, and I'm going to really address this, you can become a target of a lot of discrimination. And because I didn't look ill at all, like I didn't have any, I looked ill myself when I looked at myself, but I had all my limbs. I could dress myself, do my hair, go to work. And I worked in a really, really large office, 350 people, and put on my smile every day and did my job and stuff like that. But I think that I always felt that there were judgments because people didn't understand. I didn't talk about why I was off work. My employer knew because obviously of my medical information going through the insurance company to them and stuff like that. But I think it's really, really important that we don't know just because a person appears well.
Yeah.
And appears, even with like Vaughn's bereavement, even when, she could dress herself to go to work and go to the office and stuff, nobody knows what's behind the package. And so when we're speaking to another person, we have no idea what's going on in their life or has gone on in their life. And so I just always try to really be present with whoever I'm talking to, whether it's a new person I run into or it's been somebody from my past or whatever, which there's not very many people like that. But we just don't know. We don't know what another individual has experienced in their life. And just because they look well doesn't mean they are well. So,
yeah. So when we think at the top of the hour here, so we're going to have to kind of think about closing this one out, but it's such a massive topic.
oh, yeah.
It's such a massive topic. So when we think about, and I have to read what I wrote here, but reset, reframe, rethink, recharge, to be who you really need to be, and then eventually who you want to be. So my sort of understanding and using these restive spots, which, by the way, when I was going through them, I didn't really think of them that way. So what we're sharing today is kind of a reframing and a rethinking about taking time out for oneself. So my current situation would be more related to business. My personal life right now is pretty, I retired in 2017 from a job that I had, and you're retired. So we both are able to live retired, if you will. We're talking economically, retired, so that neither of us don't have to go out and work for someone else. So everything we choose to do, we're blessed with being able to decide how we want to spend our days.
Correct.
So if I want to work 70 hours a week on my podcast, or, in coaching or anything I'm doing, well, that's up to me. But the rethinking that has had to occur regularly since I started to become more public with my work. Because the demands of the business models that almost anybody in business leadership teaches, I can't keep up. I literally can't keep up. And the problem with that is anything in any area of our life where we're using the regular model, the success model, right? If you can't literally keep up with it, or believe you can't, then it does set us up for this feeling of failure and I'm out. And using that when I was out, right? I had to be passed over for promotions, for example. I actually really, at that time, if I'd wanted to change jobs, I remember once I had an opportunity to switch, not the employer, but the department I was working for, because I was with government. They had never heard of anybody working 4 days a week. And I was like, and it was a place I thought I really wanted to work. And so right there, you're told, right? Not as bad as, necessarily you're never going past the wheelchair. So give it all up now. We're shown, not just told, but we're shown in many ways when we are living what we think is less than our capacity, or what really is less than what we used to do because of what's happened and how it's changed us. We're shown in multiple ways that you're not at the top of the pack. And if you want to be at top of the pack, you want to be the most successful financially, career-wise, get on the stage and be this, vivacious personality and all this sort of stuff, you need to do X, Y, and Z to get there and stay there. Now, I'm talking in our culture in North America. I'm not sure what it's like in Europe. I'm not sure what it's like in Asia. I just don't know. But I do believe that there are pressures, very similar pressures in many cultures around the world, just because of our modern times. And so rethinking, reframing, resetting, recharging, all of these things, I honestly think I do. I said earlier, maybe I don't do them on a regular basis, but I almost think I do it daily. Now that I think about it, I think I actually think about it before I even get up in the morning. And I take a few minutes and I go, what do I feel capable of today? How do I really want to plan? Because also a lot of life, especially for people who are working, managing kids, doing whatever, you're planning ahead. Sometimes a year ahead, when are you going to take the next vacation? But you're slotting all these things in. And responsibilities and obligations to care for multiple, responsibilities, tasks, children, spouses, homes, jobs, etc., etc. Whereas you and I don't really have that.
Right.
We only have to really kind of worry about ourselves.
Right.
So I do feel it's kind of luxurious at this stage.
Yeah.
But it's still important for us. Is it? Is it important for you still to rest, pause, rethink, reframe sometimes?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And also too, like I really respect and listen to my body.
Yeah.
And I know when I can't do something, so we will maybe plan something, and we always give each other the luxury of saying, only if we're up to it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
We got to add respect
in
that group of our words.
Yeah.
Respect at the top of it.
Yeah.
Because I think it's just really essential we respect where we are. And we do that. We're not struggling, but there were years I didn't.
Yeah.
God, I think we were both so hard on ourselves.
Well, I think it's conditioning when you work in an office like I did for my entire life.
Yeah.
And you go at a pace.
Yeah.
And when you leave in the morning early, commute.
Yeah.
Do all your hours, long commute home.
Yeah.
And then turn around and do it like 5 days a week. You're in that pace mode. You just go at that pace. And so I think once I was able to give myself the opportunity to actually have my own pace, I still had activities I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I still had like a curriculum for myself.
Yeah, I love how you say that, a curriculum.
It took me some time to realize and that I couldn't keep up with my curriculum.
Yeah.
Right? And then I had to modify it, and now I don't have one. Now, I really don't. I mean, I plan things knowing I want to keep certain commitments. And those I will keep unless it's really, I really can't keep them, like doctor's appointments, our podcasts, things like that. But still giving myself permission if I had to cancel anything, I cancel it. Yeah. Or change it,
Yeah. So because this topic is so huge, we might have to come back next episode and finish off a few things, because the one thing I want to leave you with, audience, is that wherever you are, you've never thought about resetting, reframing, rethinking, redoing your life, anything, but ultimately respecting yourself and where you are and honoring that.
Right.
It is the years ago, I absolutely instilled within myself, and it has become a foundation of all the work that I do, is respect where you are, respect where you've come from, respect where you are today, and give yourself room to slowly grow into that. And it's okay if you've got to set the if the goalposts, quote unquote, for those on audio, change. Those goalposts change. For a long time, I really actually didn't like the word goal. I liked intention. But then I read something from somebody, I sort of follow her work, and she loves the word goal because it kind of keeps you a little bit accountable, but just make them that the goal is not the end result. The goal is just the feeling you want, and then you strategize and find the solutions to get to that feeling, to that outcome. And, she used an example of wanting to lose weight. And so person would say, set the goal to lose weight, but really she reframes it. The goal is really how do you want to feel when you lose weight? So losing weight is not the goal. It's how you want to feel when you lose that weight, or when we do anything. Let's move it out of that and just, I want to do, and I'm going to make this a goal. Then I've learned to now focus on, what feeling am I looking for from wanting that goal? So the intention, I guess I would probably now describe as I'm intending to have this feeling in my life, to create this change in my life. And then the goal would be to ensure I make that happen for myself to the best of my ability. And so wherever you are in your life, I want to leave you with all of the things we just talked about for yourself, all the R's with respect at the top for where you are, what you've gone through, what you can do, what state you're in, let it be okay, but do at least own the fact that you're the one that is responsible, another R, for deciding how long you want to stay in that restive place. Because we don't want to get trapped there, do we? Like I said right at the beginning, nice, comfortable, the little trickle of the currents, the sun on your face, soft blanket.
Well, I think it really depends, because I was just going to say, with setting goals and things like that, one of my goals is just to have a peaceful day. So I don't look for a big achievement.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about that. So I'll back that up. So I'm not talking about that goals and this. I'm talking about the rest of space now as one where you get to the bank and you maybe don't think you can get yourself off the bank again, back into your, because it takes a lot of work so I think what I'm trying to say is even when we do reframe, rethink, reset, pause, sometimes you still got to go back out there, and the very thing that caused us to go and rest is still there. But what maybe has changed is our mental approach to, I don't want to stay here, but some things force us to be in that same situation we're resting from still for a little while longer.
Okay.
Do you get what I'm saying?
I do, but again, I think it's a person has to decide for themselves if it's a busyness and a doingness, or is it just a contemplative thing. So is it an action step that they're looking for that they need to take in their life, or is it a being, And
I think that changes wherever we are. So you're resting at the river's edge was forced on you when you had your disabilities, and I'm thinking of your feet. You couldn't walk. Right. You're out. Right. My illnesses, I'm out. And just using that analogy, we're at the river's bank.
Right.
And as you said back in the beginning of this, some things force us to be at the river's edge.
Right.
Other times we choose now to go at the river's edge.
Right.
So speaking to those of you in the audience that are being forced to stop, I'm going to inspire you to think about all the things that maybe physically you can't change in your life right now, but mentally and emotionally make a commitment to yourself that this isn't where you want to stay stuck. Yeah. And an example for me right from the beginning of understanding when I heard the news my daughter was no longer alive, right? Very, very traumatic. My life is over, I think. But it wasn't long before I digested the information and just who I am at my core that might topple someone else forever. And that's what I'm talking about. They're in that state, being thrown onto the river's bank, you're there, and there are people that don't want to get up off of that place and not understanding the opportunities that resting at the river's edge can give them. And I had it within me, intrinsically within me, to know I couldn't stay out of the game.
Right.
But only I could slowly but surely, however long it took, and there was no goal setting. I don't basically set goals in my life, but I do have intentions. But there are people, we live by goals. Traditionally, culturally, goals are huge. Yeah. And so I'm only really talking about goals as part of the language that people are used to, even much more so than intentions. Yeah. And certainly when you're working and on the clock, and in some places, time out costs you big time. You can't afford to take it. Yeah. And so for those of you who may be watching this or listening to this and going, great that you sisters are in a place where you can reflect all you want, but we've been there where you couldn't.
Right.
We know what we're talking about.
We've already done our dues.
Bereavement in Canada, you get 3 days. And you'd have to make special arrangements if it's a child. Okay? And then you have to go on sick leave. And then how many sick days do you have? And then if you don't have enough sick days, you are going to be docked pay. And when our mom died in 2010, I was working for a different employer, and I was not aware of what I was entitled to take time off to deal with the death of her, and all of that time I took off, which probably ended up being about 2 weeks, 10 days, working days. I did it without pay. And what was so sad in that employment setting was not my boss and not human resources. No one came to me and said, you know what, but we were really sorry for this. You're in shock. You're in maybe a bit of trauma. I don't know. I was so traumatized by my daughter's death at that point that, it maybe I was, maybe I wasn't. But dealing with that, the options and the actual information wasn't even made clear to me.
Mm.
And I'll bet you more than one of you are going, yep.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do have to advocate for ourselves, educate ourselves, advocate for ourselves. And I found that all the advocating I did for myself, I found out what my rights were, what I was entitled to in work accommodations and things like that. And my employer was happier than ever to help me once I helped them understand what I needed. But boy, was that taxing. When you have to be your own advocate, reframing what you need, rethinking what you want, resetting what you can do, right? All of these R's, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard doing that by yourself when you're already feeling down and out and vulnerable and weak and even threatened by loss of income, loss of opportunities, lots of things. It's just really tough. And this is where we need a community and we need to help each other, right? And obviously I could say, well, we all need change in the policies and work policies and compassion and empathy, but that's just a complete other area I don't work in. So, so I feel like we barely touched this topic. And so next time we might have to just sort of pick up just a little bit, and maybe not. Maybe we've given everybody, and I hope we've given everybody enough information, because this feels like kind of a longer episode. I would really encourage you, if what you're hearing resonates with you, to, keep this one, available to revisit different sections of it. Use the timestamp, use the chapters on audio, and come back and sort of whatever Brenda and I are talking about that may resonate with you. Maybe you'll hear it differently. Sometimes the more you hear something, the more that you move through different phases, you can hear it differently. But ultimately, I guess my message is, don't lose hope.
I think that's an excellent one. And the other thing I was going to say is, just as Vaughn was saying earlier in the discussion, is respect yourself.
Oh gosh, yeah.
A lot of us, we don't really even understand what that is. We talk about respect and others respecting us and all that kind of stuff. You don't respect me and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But hey, do I respect me?
Yeah.
That's a huge thing, and when I respect me and get really clear on what my needs are, then it helps with the decisions I need to make.
Exactly. Okay, because this has been, as we've already kind of skirted around, a huge topic, and one for both Brenda and I, and we've both lived years with this struggle, this idea of pushing through what starts out as absolutely not possible, absolutely losing hope. My life's over. And again, due respect for anybody that is going through anything difficult. But the thing that, when we're just talking about respect for ourselves, the thing that happened to me is, and I'm briefly going to talk about this, and we'll delve into it more next episode in part 8. But, for the first few years of my bereavement, I did everything I could to make other people who had lost more than one child, or their child had been murdered, or, in whatever way it seemed more tragic than the suicide of my daughter at age 22, I made their experience worse than mine. And I did that for enough years, but it simmered underneath. We were talking about earlier how thoughts simmer underneath us for sometimes decades. Mm-hmm. And until we understand what's simmering under there, we can't really, really deal with the pain mm-hmm. that's causing us on top of other pain, layers and layers of it. And somebody actually, and I believe it was a therapist, actually helped me see how much I was devaluing my own grief and bereavement, because part of this idea, like, I can't get myself stuck at the river's edge. I've got to keep, going for, to be the best I can be and heal and all of these things, right? I wasn't giving myself and my experience and my loss and my trauma the due respect that it needed. Mm-hmm. And when I finally, in around 2018, kind of sat and became very restive with that, very respectful, and it actually turned into my last book, which was written largely for bereaved parents who have lost a child for suicide, Lessons in Surviving Suicide, a letter to my daughter. But it was in writing that letter to my daughter about how I really felt, all those things that had been buried within me. And I had a sort of, topical understanding of what the emotions were, what that pain was, but really, 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 dissecting that by going as deep within as I could. And so when Brenda and I talk about this, what seemed like the lighter pieces of it, we do not intend and in any way mean it's just stop and rest at the river's edge and everything's going to be okay. No, summing it up, I do it daily, as I said, pretty much. Things change about what we're reflecting on and maybe reframing and rethinking and all of that. Mm-hmm. But it still takes that same courage, that same oomph, that same whatever is driving us from the very initial trauma, mm-hmm. the thing that rocked our world. Mm-hmm. It still takes that same initiative and everything that is comprised of initiative, whatever that willingness, a ton of things. Mm-hmm. Would you agree?
I would. Absolutely.
So we've definitely spent a wonderful time here with each other and with you, and we're going to continue this conversation in part 8 on our next episode. We're going to focus a little more, though, on when you absolutely can't see your way out of the struggle. Mm-hmm. Take you back a little bit to the beginning of this idea, this stop, rest. And if you physically, literally feel stuck in an environment, feel stuck in a struggle, that's a relationship, feel stuck in a struggle, conflict with yourself about what you think you can or can't do, want or don't want, and, you are frustrated, you are depressed, you are hopeless, you are anything but inspired. We're going to pick it up from there and give you some, hopefully thought-driven ideas to understand that you don't have to stay in that frame of mind. Mm-hmm. There are things that you can do to keep yourself going. And we're going to talk about how we did that for ourselves.
Well, I was just going to say, we've both been there.
We certainly have.
We know what we're talking about.
We certainly do. Mm-hmm. So I hope you join us for that episode. And if you haven't seen any of the earlier episodes, I hope you take a moment to go visit any of the ones that we're presenting here on the Soul Sister series. And until we see you next week, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We are the Soul Sisters.
Love you, Sid.
Love you too. See you next time.
Bye.